Why did ancient people consider drugs sacred? The answer to this question is hidden in the depths of strange history. Today, we will find out the complete mystery.
This belief was not only drugs, but also deeply connected to the spiritual world and the power of nature. Mysterious practices were used in ancient societies.
In the first civilizations, people considered nature to be gods. They used drugs as a means of sacred communication. There was a deep belief in rituals.
Shamans believed that it was possible to enter the spirit world through drugs and understand the signs of the future. This was their ancient ritual method.
Ancient physicians used drugs to reduce pain. Nature was the main source of medicine in the treatment of mental anguish. They had ancient knowledge. Drugs were not only entertainment, but also part of social bonding. Everyone joined together in festivals and rituals. In ancient societies, there was a deep. In many cultures, drugs were considered a gift from the gods. People believed that spiritual power increases. Deep spiritual ideas. Traces of intoxicating plants have been found in ancient temples and tombs. Ancient research has found evidence that they were used as symbols of religious rituals and power. Now, people then considered intoxicating a sacred experience, not fear. It was part of their spiritual life. There was a deep belief in society. Some tribes believed that intoxicating could be used to communicate with the spirits of ancestors. Rituals were an important part of their culture. They were deep. In ancient medicine, intoxicating plants were used to relieve pain and bring mental peace. It was a common practice in society. Now, in ancient civilizations, intoxicating was sometimes seen as a dangerous and sometimes as a sacred power. The belief was a dual idea. People's thoughts were divided. Now, in many places, intoxicating rituals were performed secretly. It was forbidden in some societies. However, it was still prevalent. Spiritual beliefs were deeply rooted in today. Shamans used intoxicants to perform rituals. They held leadership roles in society. They believed in spiritual communication. It was important in ancient tribes. Ancient people saw intoxicants not as a means of fear, but as a means of knowledge and spiritual development. The belief was deep-rooted in society. It is now established. Intoxicant rituals were used to explain the relationship between humans and nature. Nature was a source of sacred energy. The spiritual concept was deeply ancient. In ancient societies, intoxicants were sometimes used as a means of control and sometimes as a spiritual test. Shamans believed that it was a means of power. Many researchers believe that ancient intoxicants were part of the spiritual development of human civilization. Research is ongoing. New perspectives are being developed. It is ongoing. Intoxicant plants were a source of spiritual power and knowledge for ancient people. They considered them gifts from the gods. There was a deep belief that was prevalent at that time. Ancient intoxicants were used to... It was seen as a journey where reality and imagination were mixed. It was a deep experience. It was a mental change. Intoxication was not just entertainment. It was a means of understanding the meaning of life and death. Many tribes considered it a sacred journey. There was spiritual education here. People felt the power of nature through intoxication. They respected it. It was a part of spiritual life. There was deep faith in society at that time. Many rituals were performed with intoxicating plants. People received them as gifts from the gods. They gave spiritual power. It was deep. Shamans entered the spiritual world through intoxication. They tried to see the future. It was the center of rituals. It was a deep faith, according to them. Ancient people saw intoxication as sometimes dangerous and sometimes as a sacred power. It opens the door to the soul. Faith was a deep concept among people. Although intoxicating rituals were a symbol of breaking the rules of society, they were part of spiritual faith. Shamans considered it a power. It was deeply prevalent and is still seen. In many civilizations, intoxication was a symbol of spiritual awakening, used to indicate the connection between humans and gods. Deep belief was prevalent in society. Research continues to this day. The experience of intoxication was a sacred path for people to gain spiritual knowledge. They considered it a source of life knowledge. People believed deeply in it. Intoxicating rituals were a means of maintaining mental and spiritual balance. They were of particular importance in society. Deep belief was then and is still present. Shamans used intoxication to open spiritual doors, changing consciousness. They had a powerful influence on the tribe. Deep belief was then and still is. Ancient people used intoxication as a means of gaining spiritual power and knowledge. They were respected in society. Deep belief was still present. Many studies suggest that the use of intoxication was part of the spiritual evolution of human history. It was deeply associated with culture. It was prevalent to this day. Intoxicating plants were considered sacred sources of spiritual power by ancient people. They considered it a gift from the gods. Deep beliefs were prevalent in society at the time. Ancient use of intoxicants. Spiritual awakening of people was an important part of social bonding. Deep beliefs were used in rituals then, now seen. Intoxicant rituals were a means of gaining spiritual power. Shamans performed a means of communicating with the gods. Respected in society. Deep beliefs still survive.
প্রাচীন মানুষেরা নেশাজাত দ্রব্য ব্যবহার করত পবিত্র পথ হিসেবে। স্পিরিচুয়াল নলেজ অর্জনে এটা ছিল ধর্মীয় জীবনের অংশ। গভীর বিশ্বাস এখনও ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করে।
In many cultures, intoxicating plants were a sacred means of connecting with the gods, part of the spiritual experience. Deep belief was still present in society.
Intoxicating experiences were a sacred way for people to gain spiritual knowledge and power, part of religious life. Deep belief was still present in society. Intoxicating rituals were a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Shamans used them as a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Deep belief was still present in society. Ancient people used intoxicating rituals as a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Deep belief was still present in society. Intoxicating rituals were an important means of connecting with the gods. Shamans practiced them as a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Deep belief was still present in society. Ancient people used intoxicating rituals as a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Deep belief was still present in society. In many cultures, intoxicating plants were used as a sacred means of connecting with the gods. Rituals were a sacred means of connecting with the world. Deep beliefs were prevalent in society and still survive today. Ancient intoxicating rituals were performed by shamans to gain spiritual power and communicate with the gods. Deep beliefs were still alive in society. This history shows that intoxicants are not just a habit. They are part of culture, faith, and spirituality. Now give your opinion.